Force Design 2030 guidance emphasizes the need for resilient communication architectures capable of closing kill chains in austere environment. With that comes the need to equip our Marines with the communications equipment to meet that mission. Communication and information systems, such as ground radios, are critical to providing Marines reliable, secure, and flexible communication networks, a critical component of our warfighter's toolkit. The modern battle space relies on radios for situational awareness, decision-making, and information sharing. Product Manager for Ground Radios acquires the systems Marines need to communicate securely, including in satellite-denied environments. Today, I'm pleased to have the Product Manager for Ground Radios, Major Joshua Kapp, on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you. So, can you share a little bit about your background in the Marine Corps and how you came to work in acquisition?
Tripp, I can. So I'm a prior enlisted Marine, commissioned in 2007 as a commo. First came to the command on an NPS payback, and I had the fortune to experience different parts of it. So I met you initially when I was doing energy engineering work down at the band that was formerly called SIAT, now it's SEAL. I did that for a better part of a year, and then I was able to secure a project officer position at McKeats doing application inclusion, which was near to the MOS in the NPS degree. Soon after that, I got selected to be the aide de camp, so I got the chance to do that for a year, and then I was instructed to go to do NOTAM as a project officer.
Okay.
Super happy I did that. Great program. It was getting off the ground, and I mean, what a way to learn about the command. Fantastic experience. Went back to the FMF. I was overseas at the time, put in for the MOS. Lucky enough to get the MOS, came back in 2018. And since then, I've been fortunate enough to be a team lead on a couple teams. So I started out in PFM SCS at the time, doing HQST. This is Headquarters Marine Corps IT Database Systems. Got an opportunity to work in GCES for a year doing fire stuff, and then recently moved to CES for ground radios. That's my story.
The rest will be history from here. So.
It will be, yeah.
In your current job, in ground radios, can you give us an overview of some of the equipment in the program?
I can. So the ground radios team is organized in 6 different IPTs, so I'm going to route off some acronyms, and if you want information, I can tell you about them. So multi-channel radio family systems, MBR2, HFR2, Link 16, SCCTHR, and waveforms. So those radios those acronyms are distinguishable by the frequency and the capability of the radios, so they're broken up. Collectively, our mission is to field and sustain tactical radio equipment that enables command and control and situational awareness at echelons and elements across the MAGTF. It provides line of sight, beyond line of sight, secure voice data that operates on the HF, VHF, UHF, TACSAT, SATCOM, and frequency bands, and then provides for network connectivity across the RF spectrum down to the squad level. So it's a long way of saying that we cover all of tactical radios for the Marine Corps.
That's a much shorter way of saying all that other stuff you just said. All right, so in your role as a product manager, just as a product manager in general and specifically for ground radios, what would an average week look like for you?
Ground radios as a team, our job is to ensure that the 85,000 plus radios that are currently in the FMF and the additional 34,000 radios that we're going to acquire in the next 5 years is supported, sustained to enable comms across the FMF. All right, so we stay busy with a funding line in excess of $250 million a year. We're in a consistent cycle of contract prep and award, product testing, software firmware updates, new technology eval, waveform development, FMF engagement, support and sustainment efforts, and then we spend a considerable time doing commodity management and integration activities across the command and services. It is a busy team full of professionals that like what they do, are good at what they do, and they're productive and successful.
Bring passion to the job. And
what I really like about the team is their investment. So not only the government civilians and the Marines that work in the team, but also the contractors. So, the vast majority are prior Marines. They have children, right? And brothers and sisters that are in the Marine Corps currently serving. So that just brings a lot of dedication into the work that they do. So it's not just about, being successful at the things, right? Because you want to be productive and a successful person, but there's true passion behind it because they know what the end result is.
They've been there. They have friends and family who, as you said, are there now.
Yeah.
Will be there in the future. So how much Marine feedback do you get, and how does that factor into your processes?
So we need Marine feedback to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the FMF. So I'll just cover some of the things that we've done recently. Let's say just since January. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the multi-channel handheld radio system, right? We spent 3.5 weeks in the desert of Arizona with 20 Marines that came across all 3 MEFs. And during that time, we asked them to evaluate the radio, and do other things that we need to get across the goal line for our future field decision, like validate configurations, red light TMs, work through our network, our new equipment training, assess our HSI considerations. And so what we want to be able to do specific for the handheld is as it gets fielded, we want to make sure that the accompanying gear, is set up specifically for those Marines missions as best as we can. So evaluations of KDUs, lengths of cables, specific multiband antennas. We want to know the current pouch that the OEM is offering. Where are you going to put it? How does it fit in? Is it manageable when we're taking it through an urban environment or through a desert environment? How is that fitting? Things like that. So very good. We came out of there not only with good surveys that we can take some action on, but better informed to solidify our baseline configuration for BCA.
Do they seem to like what you've got?
So the good and I won't say the bad, but when you ask a Marine a question, they're going to give you a good answer, right? And what we want is, that honest feedback. So when there are things that are actionable, we want to take action. When there are things that potentially, identify maybe a lack of training, maybe a lack of awareness of what the radio can and can't do. What was it designed to do? And really another more exciting part is when they're out there and you say, all right, Marine, here is a multi-channel radio that is basically, 2 computers in a small handheld form factor that can do many things at the same time. From a comm range perspective, here's how we think it will be employed. Now, what do you think about that? And they'll go out there and they'll show you something different. Let's say an 03 is going to have a different perspective, an 08 is going to have a different perspective. So being able to see and hear, and talk about those perspectives is important.
Okay, that's excellent. The idea that you are right out talking to the Marines is exciting stuff.
Yeah, it was a good event. It was a good food. From additional engagements, routinely we talk to the 2800s. These are the comm maintainers. In fact, tomorrow there's a GMAG, and then on a quarterly basis we're going to talk to that community to address specific concerns they have, inform them about upcoming TIs, MIs, ECPs that we're working on, integration efforts, stuff like that. Other engagements that we do on a routine basis are with the Marines, the maintainers, So these are the comm maintainers of the 2800s. So tomorrow we have a GMAG that's done on a routine basis. We have quarterly syncs just with ground radios with the fleet. It's a good venue to hear feedback from the fleet specifically on maintenance questions or concerns or trends that they see. We can give them information. We're going to release a technical instruction, a modification instruction, or other types of efforts that we have going on, integration into JLTV, stuff like that.
So what role do radios play in Joint All-Domain Command and Control, also known as JADC2?
So the framework itself requires connectivity at all levels. And so when you look at a tactical radio and specifically a tactical radio that allows data to be transmitted, is that part of the JADC2 environment? Well, yeah. But how do you fully realize that right across the DoD? You've got to have a radio that, 1, closes those links for the Marines, and for other services. 2, does it in a way in which it isn't compromised, So you look at resiliency. 3, does it with let's say the crypto, that's going to be in season at the time. And then 4, does it with the right waveforms. And so you have to be able to combine all that stuff to realize the DoD's visions of JADC2. Now, there are radios out there today, that can do those things, and the future radios that will field that will be able to do those things. General way of saying that. Well, we keep that in mind, because we have to be interoperable with the other services.
When I was a much younger man, I did carry a Prick 77 radio for a while in the Army, and I know that we have a lot of commonality on all equipment with the Army. So, how much collaboration is there on those, and do you interact with other services and allies as well?
We do. As early as 2015, we've been in continued conversation with the Army, specifically PM Tactical Radios and their program manager, handheld man-packet small form fit HMS. And so we have to be in communications with them, not only so we can be on the same page for the things that we talked about before with the JEDC2 environment, but we want to know like what contracts do they have available, the same as they want to know what we're doing. We want to know what versions, firmware and software versions they're on for their specific radios. We want to be able to share test data, right, so we can leverage each other's good works, NSA certification. And recently, we want to be in lockstep with the Army and the Navy SOCOM when it comes to waveform development. And so if we can partner with another service who's working with an OEM, right, to get a waveform on a radio that we have, that's good for us. And if we can do, let's say, a waveform and they're doing a waveform, now there's no duplication. And if we keep each other informed about when we're going to reach the finish lines, right, and that finds its way as a part number, let's say, on a contract, well, that's good for everybody. So, yeah, there's a lot of conversation between the services because there has to be. And we want to leverage each other's good works so we can be more productive.
So that's our Army partners and such. How about industry? So what part does industry play in past efforts, and what are some of the challenges that you would like to see industry tackle?
Yeah, so industry specifically for software-defined radios has led the way. So a lot of the radios that we're sustaining and future radios that we're procuring are NDI. And so from that aspect, they're going to spend their time and efforts to develop those, and then we're going to look to see if those are solutions that will meet our requirement. What we want to be able to do is get more out front, right? So be able to have those discussions early on in which we say, here's where the Marine Corps is heading, and here's what we see, here's where we see ourselves in the next 5 or 10 years. And when we specifically say we're going to operate in this general area, we're going to focus on this type of cryptographic capability. We want to look specifically at these waveforms. We want to be in line with the NSA. We want to be in line with the Air Force, right, and some other entities in the future. We got to have those conversations. So we've got good comms with them. If we can get out in front while they're in their development, maybe we can shape that to our benefit.
Right. Excellent. Get them working for us. So run with the theory. So what about the people that do work for you? Your team, can you talk to us about some of their accomplishments over the last year, and what are some of the things that you're looking to accomplish this year?
Yeah, so like I said before, I'm excited about this team. They're hard workers, they're dedicated, they're intelligent, and frankly, they impressed me with their production last year. So just in the last, we'll call 10 months, they let the multi-channel radio family systems, MCHH, this multi-channel radio, 10-year contract. It's a big contract, $750 million ceiling. Right, that gets the Marine Corps its next generation of handheld radios. Since then, right, so immediately award and then subsequent delivery orders put about 14,000 radios on order up to this point. So they're working really hard, specifically with the MCHH. The HF team completed the necessary contract actions and then made subsequent procurements to the tune of about 2,600 future remotes. So these are the RF 9800R, so this is going to replace a current remote that we have, and it enables both the MBR2 and our HF systems to pass data. It enhances our capability when we look at operations from our anthill to our COC, and then across different areas through /wire. So it's going to provide additional capability. And then continued our GLTV vehicle integration work for both our HF and our VHF systems. And then we started Link 16 engagements and then worked to stand up a program of record. So you've heard probably Link 16 in the lexicon. And
absolutely.
The Marine Corps is finalizing requirements, and once those arrive, then we can stand up a program of record and get after level setting the fleet and then providing additional capability. See, next year, or as you were this year. So we're going to begin procuring our multi-channel man-pack VRCs and then make a final selection for our dismounted capability. We're looking to procure the remainder of the AAOs for our VHF and HF systems. Finalize the prep work for our fielding decisions for our MCHH so we can start fielding in 24. Get after our Link 16 work, update waveforms across systems, and then continue to update NEOs.
Okay.
Right, so if you know what any of those acronyms are, then you're doing it.
So I knew about half of those acronyms, maybe a third. Give myself credit for maybe a third of them.
I'm assuming there's 1 to 10, 100 Marines that are going to listen to this, and they don't know every single acronym. And if you do, email Tripp your name and where you work, and you'll get an email back.
It'll be an email that just says, thanks for listening to the podcast. So, right, I appreciate that plug. So question, so what is next for PDM ground radios?
So I'm going to throw a couple more acronyms out, and then I'll tell you what they mean, and then why we're getting excited about
Those 100 Marines will already know that. But.
Some, right? If there's industry listening, then they'll know some of this too, because the Army's doing this already, and it's pretty darn exciting. Right, so we're taking a hard look at CMOS, right, as the true form factor for the future tactical radio capability. All right, CMOS is C4ISR modular open suite of standards. It's part of a MOSA construct, modular open systems architecture. All right, so what's exciting about this is if you can standardize the dimensions of the box, and you can standardize a ton of things that go into the box, cards, right? Cards that have different purposes, how the switching happens, then you could potentially get a lot of action and activity from industry that's spread right across many areas. And so IEEE, right? It's a term that means something and helped us standardize.
They do standards for all sorts of things,
right? So if we can capitalize on those standards, and the Army is already starting to work on that, right? The future is wide open. So our problem, right? The Marine Corps needs the ability to provide enhanced multi-channel tactical radios, updated enhanced waveforms, and modern crypto on a routine basis, all while getting out of interlock. So as we go forward, right, and we have to keep pace with the adversary, we're going to have to update those internal components quicker than we're doing it now. And so to follow the standard OEM model, awesome radio, software defined, multi-channels, right? But you can't turn quick enough for what the future is going to require. And as the waveforms become, we'll call them more numerous and more interesting with the things that they're going to enable us to do, we got to have components that allow us to keep pace with that. So we think that the CMOS construct is the way that we're going to get after all that.
Keep up with the speed of industry and technology.
It's a different way to look at right how we procure and sustain a tactical radio capability. And it's pretty exciting.
Not a brand new box every couple of years. It's just some components.
It's the components are pretty standardized. The coolness is when you have a specific card, right? You're going to have multiple waveforms on that card. Maybe you have another card that has other multiple waveforms. So you could tailor your specific capability for your mission. So if you're going to go into theater, right, and you want to do let's say multiple activities. But let's just say that you got to go in there, and we'll use a Marine that's calling in fires, for instance. He's got to communicate with the air. He has to communicate right with the ground. He's got to be able to do voice and data at the same time. He's got to be able to potentially get ISR feeds in. Right. This Marine is carrying a lot of kit. He needs batteries for all that. He's got to have cables for all that. There's normally something in the middle that's computing all the tracks and data to get a firing solution. That requires a lot of stuff. And so he's packing, let's say, 4 or 5 radios. If you can now get that down, and instead of a whole radio, you can put that in a card, and you can tailor-made that specific card for your AAO, right? You're gonna be able to do things. What's great about this handheld radio? So this is a dual-channeled handheld radio that can do voice and data at the same time. So when you look at the capability that it's going to replace, and specifically some of the MANET waveforms, this is the mobile ad hoc network waveforms, this self-forming, self-healing goodness that we're using now in bigger form factors.
That we all talk about at the dinner table every night.
If you're cool, you do.
The cool kids, right?
This is a handheld form factor. So the idea that we're going to cut the size and increase the capability, and when we look at the Marines that got to have multiple radios, we talked about them, let's say the JTAC and the Fires Marines, we're providing greater capability at a lower, let's say, swap value, and then we want to be able to stretch the legs on this thing as waveforms start to develop, right, to see if we can get these things ported on there. Now, it's not going to do as a good of a job as the multi-channel Manpack just because of its size, but it's a pretty exciting kit. Now, the team that specifically brought this across the finish line this January with the big contract that we were talking about, so this is the multi-channel radio family of systems IPT. So Bill, Drew, Alex Sabea, and Brian Marshall, to say a few, and then all of the support contract team and the engineers at the PM level and even at the PFM level. I mean, everybody was involved in this. And so as we move this forward in its, let's say it's pre-fielding work, and they get a fielding decision and get this out to the fleet, this is an exciting time for the Marine Corps. Now, coming on the heels of that, it's going to be the multi-channel Manpack, and this is a bigger, let's say, box. It's going to be, we'll call it a distributed capability, right? And there's also going to be a VRC component. The goodness about the VRC component is, right, it's going to be standardized across the PEOs and all of our platforms. So as we move forward, and we talked about the future, which is going to be a CMOS form factor, this is going to have the legs to get us there. So I'm excited about that. I'll brag a little bit about the HF team. They were asked to do a very hard thing a couple years ago and do an early fielding. And the amount of work required, not only in the front end, but the additional work that they're continuing to do on the back end, I mean, that's taxing, right? Lee King, Thurman, Ian Rodriguez, like they're constant professionals that continue, right, to provide value to the Marine Corps by putting these capabilities out there and then sustaining them. It is a hard thing to do to maintain and sustain a software-defined radio. It probably was easier with the BRIC 77. We have to worry about firmware and software updates. We have to worry about, resilient capabilities. If LPI and LPD mean anything, no. I mean, somebody on here knows.
Somebody. No, I appreciate the lesson. So for those 100 Marines or so who have understood everything you've had to say, I would say, we're always looking for acquisition professionals. So what would you say to a Marine who might be thinking about making the switch to an acquisition MOS?
I got to tell you, this is a challenging and rewarding MOS, which is always looking for senior Marines who want to make a lasting impact to the enterprise. So if there's a Marine that's listening and you think this might be an MOS that you want to get into, I'd recommend you go out and look at the MAR-MS solicitations. So specifically this year, I think it was 416 TAC 12 and 534 TAC 22. So go look at those. It'll give you some decent points of contacts and a target to shoot at. It's always a good idea if you're interested in MOS, get orders to the command. And when you get here, be hungry and add value. Get into the trenches as early as you can and make the program better, and then you'll get the bug.
That sounds great. I really appreciate everything you've had to bring to us today. I look forward to maybe getting you back here sometime in the future. You can give us background on something else, wherever you're moving to next. But we've got a thing we do around here called the lightning round. So I've got some lightning round questions for you. Are you ready for those?
I'm ready.
You are ready. That is good to know. Good to know. And you look ready. All right. So when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Race car driver and a cowboy.
Race car driver and a cowboy. Is that two things or just one?
Well, you can have two jobs. You could do one on Monday through Friday and do the other one Saturday.
Cowboying on weekends. Nice. Well, I guess it's race car driving on weekends.
Yeah, it's for fun.
If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
St. Paul.
St. Paul.
Yep.
It's an excellent choice. Do you have any tips for maintaining a work-life balance? The chuckle tells me that maybe we're still working on that one ourselves.
So God, family, country, core, in that order. Try to PT every day except Sunday.
God, family, country core.
Yep. The PT thing I'm lacking on, but if you're going to maintain stress in a stressful environment, you got to find some outlet.
Good advice. And so what is a TV show, book, movie, or podcast that you would recommend?
Let's see. Right now I'm trying to work my way through Introduction to the Devout Life by DeSales. If I was going to recommend a book for funsies, I guess it would be E.B. Sledge's With the Old Breed, if you've ever read that one. Mm-hmm. Man, that's a classic. There's Marines listening to this. You got to read that book. Missioner makes a good book series. Like if you're going to move around in PCS all over the place. For instance, when I came over here, he did a book on the Chesapeake area. I thought that was informative.
He's got Texas, Hawaii, right?
Yeah, stationed in, if you're ever free meth in Hawaii, he's got an awesome one about Hawaii. Mm-hmm. So it gives you kind of some perspective on the environment.
Read some Missioners, so good deal. Well, excellent suggestions. I'll look into some of them, and I know that we'll get those posted up so that other people can listen to your advice. So thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this concludes another episode of Equipping the Core. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation today. If so, please take a couple minutes to leave us a review, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. Until next time, stay safe. This is Tripp Elliott, signing off.